Welcome to the Why Did I Get Cancer podcast. I'm Deborah Herlax-Enos, a small-town girl turned TV nutritionist and healthy living expert. I design health programs for the average guy or gal, including those average guys named Metallica. On September 1st, 2020, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I asked every oncologist the same question, why did I get cancer? But none of my doctors had good answers for me. I wanted answers, and that's why I started this podcast. I want to help you to lower your cancer risk and provide self-care tips for those in the battle. I'm getting answers, and I want to share them with you. It's going to be hard to pick just one takeaway from today's episode. I had a great conversation with the environmental toxin expert and green living expert at the Anti-Cancer Lifestyle website. Her name is Debbie. And we talked about, environmental toxins in our home, but also in the air that we breathe. We talked about EDCs, which is endocrine system disrupting chemicals. And it sounds really complicated. It's a lot of words, but let me tell you how important it is to manage these EDCs in your life because they can impact your hormone levels. They can impact your fertility and your inflammation and oxidative stress. She gave me a couple of great tips, and I'm going to go ahead and share one of them with you right now. She said to be very careful with the air in your home. It's something we do 12 times a minute. So we want to make sure that our air is as clean as possible. And that means maybe getting some plants in your home, keeping doors and windows open, just a little bit of a crack, and maybe you open them, a little bit wider in the morning, kind of bring in as much fresh air as possible. And then she also said to get rid of your stinky candles. So those candles with all of that fake fragrance, very endocrine system disrupting. So we want to make sure that maybe we get the battery candles or the unscented. So listen to today's episode. I think you will really enjoy her tips. It's really given me a lot to think about. Hey, everyone. Welcome to Why Did I Get Cancer? And I am talking to Debbie de Moulpied. So we got the two Debs on the podcast today. And she is an environmental toxin expert and green living expert for the website, The Anti-Cancer Lifestyle. And I think I just found y'all on Instagram, which, I seem to do most of my stalking. We'll call it research, not stalking. You don't want to get arrested on Instagram. And you posted something in January about EDCs. And I thought, okay, I need to talk to them. So Debbie, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. It's going to be a really great conversation, I can tell, because we're talking about two things. One, I don't know much about. And the other one, I am a habitual user of microwave ovens. Darn it. I have a feeling you're going to talk me out of that today, but let's start with.
I'm not, but okay.
All right. Let's start with EDCs. And can you just kind of give us a basic overview of, is this something we need to be aware of now if we want to be healthy?
Oh, yes, we do. So EDCs is a shortening for endocrine-disrupting chemicals. So these are chemicals that interfere with our endocrine system. So what's an endocrine system? So we have multiple organs and glands in our body, thyroid, pancreas, reproductive organs, pituitary gland. People have heard of all those glands. And those are organs that send out little messages to all the cells in our body to regulate and control the function of our body. So they're really important. So that's the endocrine system. So endocrine disrupting chemicals are just what it says. These are chemicals that disrupt this system that's really important for functioning in our body.
Okay. And does it get disrupted forever, or is it just like a little bump in the road if you ingest EDCs?
It's usually just a bump in the road with each ingestion. However, a lot of these EDCs we are constantly exposed to. So we keep going over these bumps, and that's part of the problem. So when these disruptors get into our body, they can do it three different ways by either, making the glands produce too little or too much. They can block the glands or block the chemicals or the endocrine chemicals from doing their job, or they can mimic them, and not in a good way. So those are the ways that the chemicals can disrupt our system. But like you said, okay, one-time exposure, probably not a huge big deal, but that's not, unfortunately, the world we live in. We're just constant. I mean, everything's in our air. Our air's polluted, our water's polluted, our food's polluted, our soil's polluted. So if we're constantly getting exposed, we're constantly going over those little bumps.
Okay. So we're surrounded, it sounds like.
Correct.
And what's the most common way to get EDCs into your body?
Well, you have the 3 different exposure routes. So you can either breathe, you can ingest like food, or it can go in your skin.
Oh.
So all of those exposure routes have EDC potential. So for instance, the air we breathe, there's so many pollutants that are also EDCs. Dust carries EDCs, a lot of flame retardants attached to dust. You inhale those, they go into your system. Of course, anything on your skin, you have the phthalates, you have all sorts of personal care products that might have EDCs in them. And then the food that we ingest, you have EDCs not only just in the food, but also in the food contact materials. So those 3 exposure routes are how we are getting exposed to these EDCs.
Let's tackle each one. I'd love to just have an example, but I want to start with, let's pick an organ. Let's play a game, Debbie. Pick your favorite organ. I'm going to pick thyroid. So what happens if my thyroid gets hit with EDCs?
Well, there are chemicals that, again, affect that. It can make you hypothyroid, hyperthyroid. But the thyroid does a lot of things. For example, one of the things is bone regulation. So there are chemicals or EDCs that affect the bone formation, and they call this bone dysregulation. You might end up with osteoporosis or something like that. So that's just one example of the thyroid. Again, there are multiple chemicals. I can't even begin to memorize all the EDCs out there because there are hundreds. But that's an example of the thyroid, for instance.
Okay. So let's continue with thyroid. And again, insert any organ here in this conversation. But so I might be breathing something that could impact my thyroid. So you said it could be in dust. It's winter, and a lot of people use those, like the fake fireplace logs. What about inhaling things like that, or, fabric softener? Can that impact my thyroid?
Well, we're not sure. Again, it depends on what EDC is in all of those. But yeah, you just said some great examples. So anything that's burning, whether it's wood smoke, which by the way is a group 1 carcinogen, but the fake logs, certainly fragrance, on your dryer sheets, fragrance from anything, whether it's a plug-in or fake candles or anything like that, they typically actually have a pretty serious EDC called phthalates. It's a group of chemicals, and they are particularly worrisome for actually breast cancer, but all sorts of reproductive organs and situations. So just in our air, for instance, again, you gave some great examples, but also cleaning products. They have fragrance and other chemicals that release into VOCs, which is short for volatile organic compounds. And those also have EDCs in them. And then you have PFAS, which is, the Teflon-like material. And that's also in a whole bunch of things. Your flame retardants, all that stuff has potential to become airborne. And you breathe it in, and there you go. We don't know what it's affecting, but there's a lot of potential there.
Okay, so that brings me to a question. You'd mentioned food. And so we can have these EDCs in food, but you said also the way food is packaged. What did you mean by that?
So whatever the food is contacting, and usually that's your packaged stuff, whether it's crackers or, frozen foods or, macaroni and cheese mix or something like that. Anything that's that's boxed or canned or bottled. That's all food packaging contact materials. And a lot of those have coatings on them for a variety of reasons, whether it's to prevent the sun coming in or to make it slip out of the bottle or to preserve it. So there's lots of different reasons these contact materials are coated with certain chemicals. And some of these chemicals, again, have EDC properties associated with them. So that's just the food contact materials, but it's also in the food. It can be in the food itself. So some pesticides are an EDC themselves. Atrazine is a good example that's permitted by our country. It's banned in other countries, but that's an example of a pesticide that is an EDC. And you can also get EDCs from the processing of the food. So for instance, milk, when it comes from the cow, usually goes down this long plastic tube, right?
Okay.
And that plastic tube often can have phthalates in them. And so then you're going to have it in the milk product. So there's different ways our food can get contaminated with these chemicals.
And 50 years ago, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Oh, heavens no,
Right.
because, they couldn't test it. They didn't have the capabilities of testing it at these low, small levels that you find the EDCs causing disruption to the hormone system.
Wow. Okay. So mildly terrifying. I'm just going to be really honest. Give us some action steps. What can we do? What do we maybe look for on a package of crackers or a candle? What do we look for? I love my candles. I want to burn candles.
I know.
I still buy packaged food. I'm pretty good about, cooking everything from scratch and, rarely using prepackaged stuff. But what does somebody look for?
Yeah. So you mentioned a few things already, which actually we cover at the Anti-Cancer Lifestyle Program in our module. And we have, blogs and ebooks and all sorts of stuff. So we just did one on candles specifically.
Oh, okay. I'll tag that in the show notes, everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and it's really useful. Basically, stay away from paraffin and fragrance, but it goes into deeper than that as well. So with regard to EDCs, there's lots that you can do. One is plastic.
Okay.
So many EDCs are associated with plastic. So not only does plastic leach, it leaches under all sorts of conditions, whether, it's sitting in a water bottle or being heated. You do not microwave plastic, period. I don't care what the companies say. You also have microplastics that are leaching. I'm sure you saw the recent article that had, 250,000 microplastics in one water bottle, that kind of stuff. So you really want to pitch the plastic. So try and buy things in glass. Yes, canned foods are mostly lined with plastic, but you can, buy companies that are really devoted to this. Eden and Annie's. Is it Annie's or Amy's? I'm going to have to look at that. That are really devoted. Eden is definitely devoted to making safe food. So that's if you have to use cans, but it's easy to kind of avoid cans, with glass and cooking from scratch, like you said you did. But plastic's a big one. So whether it's, buying a coffee to go or whatever, bring your own stainless steel or glass container. Just stop using as much plastic. But you want to reduce pesticide use. So that means, going more organic. You want to watch your cleaning products. So you want to go with more natural cleaning products instead of the synthetic ones, because they're not going to have as many of the EDC chemicals in there. Of course, the fragrance is huge. Fragrance is everywhere. Oh my God, it's on doggy poop bags, right?
It's crazy. I was at the store the other day and trying to buy plastic garbage bags,
Oh my God, right?
I finally just left and I just said, okay, maybe this is just a sign that I need to, just recycle in a different way, have less, it brought I had a whole existential crisis when I was at the supermarket. But I thought, goodness gracious, are we so concerned with our garbage that we are going to pollute our systems by spraying Fabuloso, which is just the worst smelling stuff I've ever smelled, on every plastic garbage bag made in the US.
Yeah, and the marketers don't help because you can't tell.
Right.
They don't tell you that it's got fragrance. The whole aisle smells now.
Right, it does.
So you really can't choose. And it stinks,
It
right?
does. Yeah.
But I mean, whether it's the garbage bag aisle or the cleaning aisle, you can tell it's all chemicals because that's the aisle that stinks.
Yeah, and honestly,
No.
I mean, I think I'm more sensitive now to it because I've worked so hard to get them out of my body.
And you do.
And so now when I even Christmas shopping at the mall, which, oh my gosh, I don't do that very often, but the smells and the perfume and people are spraying, smell this. It was like, you're giving me a headache.
Exactly. Yeah. And you're right. You become desensitized as you become accustomed to fragrance. And also it's something called going nose blind. So your smelling organs and little cells, they just get tired. And so they stop being able to smell that specific smell. Really? So it's called going nose blind. So that happens too. And then you think, oh, I need more, right?
Oh my gosh. That's fascinating. I've never heard that. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So other things that you can do, avoid, the PFAS chemical, which is the Teflon-like thing, which is again, kind of anywhere, stain repellents, water repellents, of course, our food cookware, and, Glide dental floss has the PFAS chemical on it. And yes, you do absorb that into your bloodstream. Flame retardants are big, and still cash register receipts. They still have BPA on them, or it's kissing cousin BPS or BPF, which are just as bad. So they still have that, and they're not going to tell you, that it is or isn't on there. So you try to avoid touching them, put it in your bag, get an email receipt, and keep your hands washed. So you come home from the grocery store, wash your hands.
That's a really great action plan because this is a heavy topic, and it sounds like it has massive repercussions in our body. And so I don't want to gloss over the happy part, which is, hey, there are things you can do about this. Because I'm a happy person. I'm a joyful person. I want to know what I can do today to be better today and be better tomorrow. So I want to make that available. So we'll tag that in the show notes. And
I did want to add one more thing about the EDCs, and the BPA and the phthalates and the parabens are kind of poster child chemicals for the EDCs, and they actually really are important for breast cancer. And this is another thing that these chemicals can do, and this is really important for people with estrogen positive cancer who might be on estrogen blocking therapy. So tamoxifen is one of those therapies, typically done for 5 years or so. Well, tamoxifen, blocks the estrogen, but if you go ahead and have BPA or phthalates or these things that mimic estrogen, you actually reduce the efficacy of tamoxifen. And there are several studies that show that. So these are actually serious estrogen, disrupting chemicals that do this. They are disrupting the efficacy of therapies like tamoxifen. And also androgen deprivation therapy can also be reduced the efficacy depending on which endocrine disrupting chemicals you ingest. So these are not to be taken lightly. These can very much impact your journey.
Okay. So a couple things I want to unpack now is most of the people on my oncology team were encouraging me to go on tamoxifen, which I did my own research and I chose not to go that route. But I had many meetings with him about tamoxifen. Nobody ever mentioned anything about watching the estrogens that I could be in contact with on a daily basis. And that sounds like that completely can impact, according to the research, how that tamoxifen is going to operate in my body to help me prevent a recurrence of breast cancer.
Correct. And that is typically not done. It's not on their radar. But it is astonishing. The medical profession has a different take in terms of, they want to treat, they want a drug, go on your happy way. And they're actually, very empowering things that we can do ourselves. And, they don't know everything. So, hopefully we can kind of fill in the gaps and help in that respect.
Okay, it's a new year, and every wellness professional that I follow on social media is talking about the importance of protein. I couldn't agree more. I do eat a fair amount of really good, high-quality protein, but I also eat a very fair amount of organic, non-GMO plants. So I'm going to give you a couple of pro tips. Here's my pro tip for chicken breasts. Chicken breasts can be very thick and take a very long time to cook. Super high protein and, lots of wonderful things about it, but hard to cook after a long day and you want to try to get dinner on the table in 20 minutes. Here's the tip. Slice the chicken breast in half lengthwise so that it then becomes basically two thinner chicken breasts. So it's basically like a chicken tender. Cook it over medium heat. I use a really good oil like ghee or coconut oil or avocado oil. The coconut oil will give it, kind of a nice, almost like an Asian flavor. Great to add soy sauce or coconut aminos. Probably 3 or 4 minutes each side, depending on how you cook it. And then you've got dinner on the table in 20 minutes. So I love that. Here's my other pro tip is ButcherBox has a great special right now just for my community. And it's only until the 31st, so you got to act quickly. And what it is, $20 off of your first box and free protein for a year. And you get to pick your protein. So your options are chicken breast, like we just talked about, salmon, or ground beef. Here's the other great thing about ButcherBox is you don't have to do it for a year. I talked to my friends at ButcherBox the other day, and they said, tell your community, take us on a date. Try us out for a month. If you don't like it, it is super easy to cancel. And if you do like it, you commit. You might commit for a couple months. For me, I kind of do it every other month because I'm traveling quite a bit. So you can commit as long as you like. It's easy to cancel. But honestly, I think you're going to love them as much as I love them. And you've heard me talk about this before. One of the things that I love the most is that they know where the protein comes from because they know the farmers and they know the fishermen. So give them a try. All the info is in the show notes. Use the code ENOS to get this deal and let me know if you have any questions. And please let me know how much you love it, if you love it as much as I do. This is really amazing information that I think we all need, moving forward because EDCs contribute to inflammation. Inflammation is responsible for every disease in our modern culture.
Correct. And apparently inflammation is responsible for about 25% of the cancers was the last statistic I heard. So it's again, no joke. And EDCs can affect, the immune system. So,
yeah. Okay. And I love that there are things I know, breathe. I'm going to have to go do my, to take a namaste break, but, many things you've opened my eyes in many ways today. And so one of the things I'll say is we probably just need to take a look at our homes. If, a lot of us work from home, we're spending maybe 50 to 80% of our day in our homes. And we probably need to take a look at the things that are around us, meaning the Glade plugins and lots of candles. I saw a meme online the other day. This woman, she was like raising her fists and saying, "Don't take my candles away. Like it's the only thing I have left." But there are other things we can do. It's winter. I love burning candles. And so I do have a lot of, fake battery candles. They've gotten pretty darn good. And I know that they're not toxic. They're not like blowing anything into my system where I'm going to be inhaling it. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And now that you mentioned the air, especially in wintertime, just came out with a blog this week about how to make your indoor air cleaner in the winter. So we just did that and we cover a lot of those things because like you said, especially if you're working from home, I'm not leaving my home all day today. It's snowing outside. So I've been home 100% today breathing my indoor air, which is more polluted than outdoor air. It
really is by a significant amount. And there's also some studies I've read. I've had quite a few air experts on. And they were saying that, we used to spend maybe 70% of our time outdoors. Now we're about 95% indoors, and that indoor air is so much more polluted than going outside.
Right.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's move on to microwaves. And it's so interesting. I got an Instagram question from our youngest daughter. Her name is Cece. And she said, okay, I see that you're, having this conversation today about microwaves. Are air fryers safer? And I said, well, honey, what I'm hearing is that air fryers are made with Teflon. I don't have an air fryer. They're made with like a Teflon type of material. So you're getting those PFAS, right, from anything that's Teflon.
Correct.
So she was saying,
but they do make air fryers that are stainless steel.
Great. Okay. I did mention that to her. So I'm going to look up some of those and I'll add those into our show notes. But so her question is, what's safer, a microwave or an air fryer?
Well, they both run a motor.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, microwaves have sort of gotten, this mythical evil thing to them. But the reality and the science shows that microwaves are no different, emitting EMFs, which is short for electromagnetic fields. Mm-hmm. They are no different than the light on your cell phone, your computer, your blender, your electric oven, your air fryer, your refrigerator, your vacuum. Anything that goes on with electricity is producing EMFs. The question is how much.
Okay.
So, and the good news is you can rectify the problem with having EMF exposure by distance. Mm-hmm. So distance is absolutely your friend. So air fryers are going to produce EMFs because they are a motor, and they, if they're on, they are producing that as well. And microwaves do the same thing. Blenders, hair dryers, they produce EMFs as well. So again, distance is your friend. The distance aspect happens immediately. So for instance, if you're using your cell phone against your ear, you don't want to press it against your ear, but only taking it a half an inch away makes a huge difference in terms of EMF exposure. And so the microwave is the same. It's stronger in terms of EMFs, so you have to go more distance. So the most recent research I've read is 5 to 6 feet. You're by the time you're at 6 feet from a microwave that's on and running, you have zero exposure to EMFs. So not a problem. So basically, it's like a lot of things. You shouldn't stand with your face against the window into the microwave. You shouldn't stand right next to the blender kind of thing. So this distance is really helpful from all of the appliances, whether you're watching TV or whatever. Mm-hmm. Distance is your friend.
That's really, that's super interesting. And I've heard that before. Distance is your friend. And I think about my poor husband. I just bug him all the time about, hey, honey, put that down. Don't put that cell phone in your pocket. But one of the things that we're currently discussing is keeping the cell phone plugged in next to your head while you're sleeping. So you're saying, so even if his phone is on airplane mode, you're saying that there's still going to be some EMFs coming out of that outlet?
Correct, okay. As long as it's on. So I believe the safe distance is, if you really want it zero, is 6 feet from a cell phone. And then you're good to go. And that's true. I mean, people have baby monitors, mm-hmm. right? That all is EMFs because it's using the waves and the Wi-Fi in the house. Right. So that's also exposure. You want to keep those away from the baby as well, a good 6 feet at least. So it's insidious where all this stuff is. But again, just distance is definitely your friend. You don't want a cell phone in your pocket or stored in your bra at all.
Yeah.
If you've ever rested your cell phone on your thigh or even put your laptop on your thigh, right? And your thigh gets mm-hmm. warm. That's the EMFs actually heating up your cells. So that's why you want distance
Mhm.
from any of those appliances, and that's going to solve the problem.
Yeah. One of my pet peeves is watching precious little children with this laptop, on their stomach and they're playing games. And I just think,
Oh, I
oh,
know.
can I
I
just
know.
give you some unsolicited coaching?
Right,
Parents,
right.
listen.
And
Yeah. And we just,
yeah. And it's you can solve it so easily. That's the
well,
thing.
and that's what we're here to talk about today is we've talked about a whole host of issues that can impact our health, but these are solvable problems. And I always like to end on a good note, that, you've talked about, with EDCs, making sure, maybe you have an air purifier in your home and, you're not using, these super scented candles where you walk in and it's like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm at, Bed Bath and Beyond. But,
Right.
those types of things and lotion. I mean, I just use plain old jojoba oil that I get at Trader Joe's. That's my lotion. I put a little essential oil in it instead of
Good for
instead of the
you.
highly, scented, creamy, yummy smelling. I don't smell yummy, and that's fine. I've made peace with not smelling yummy, but I'm
There you
starting
go.
to branch out and use more essential oils. And I think I smell better again. Full disclosure, but I've been on this
You
process of trying to
no
detox.
smell is good smell too, though.
Right, right. And I've been on this journey of trying to just, detox my body after all the cancer surgeries that I had. So, and then it sounds like you're also saying, Debbie, that with any kind of anything that we're plugging in, be it an air purifier or a blender or a toaster oven, don't stand right in front of it.
Right. Again, distance is your friend. As long as it's on electrically. So if the blender is turned off, it's not doing anything. It's not emitting any EMFs.
Okay.
So it has to have, the electricity has to be on.
Okay. Okay. So,
Yeah, I did want to add in terms of microwave use, just a couple of things that, you can get some leakage if your door is damaged or the seal isn't quite right. You always want to shut it off before you open the door. So those are just prudent things in terms of using
okay.
it. But again, if all of that is in check, then you're good to go. And just do not microwave in plastic.
Yeah, it sounds like,
Stick to
yeah,
glass.
that sounds like a really good advice. And I was just at the supermarket yesterday and I was looking for sweet potatoes and they had this sweet potato wrapped in plastic and it said, microwave me. I'm ready. I'm microwave ready. And I thought, oh my gosh, really? Are we still doing stuff like
Yeah,
this? But
I know.
well, I want to end with the question that I often ask, what is one thing I can do today to not get cancer again?
Oof. Well, so that we don't beat up ourselves, we only have so much control.
Mm.
So that's a little bit of an out, but there are some things that can reduce our risk. So, and I think one of the most important things is keeping our air clean.
Okay.
So the air that we breathe. And the reason for that is because of the amount of exposure that we get when we breathe. We breathe 12 times a minute. So when you add that, how many times in 24-hour period that you're actually inhaling potential chemicals, that adds up. Where, personal care products, maybe you only apply them after you take a shower. Maybe you only wash your hair once a week. Or, okay, yes, we eat throughout the day, but again, we have choices and it's only 3 times a day. We're breathing 12 times a minute. So that's why I think keeping your air clean is probably the number one thing for me to suggest.
That's really good advice. And I'm also hearing and reading and research that, you don't have to have a $800 air purifier. You can really do a lot by maybe opening your windows for a few minutes a day and having
Correct.
plants in your house.
Correct. Plants are terrific, but they don't make a huge impact. So they make a small impact. Every little bit helps.
Okay.
Right? But like you said, opening up the windows is terrific unless it's, minus 5 degrees outside,
Right.
which it was this weekend in New Hampshire. But we also suggest, air filters and purifiers and which ones are better than others. There's some that you should stay away from.
Right.
But yeah, there are lots of things that you can do.
Okay. So it sounds like maybe just getting up, keeping my windows open for a few minutes in the morning can have a great impact on the air that I'm breathing throughout the day.
Yep. And ventilate when you cook.
Oh, tell us more about that.
Sure. Well, typically in a home, we have two areas of ventilation. Usually have, a fan, an exhaust fan in the bathroom, right? You also usually have in the kitchen an exhaust fan over the cook stove. Not every home has that, sadly to say. But if you have it, you definitely want to use it, because even if you're not using gas, just cooking food, because of the burning process of the food itself, is releasing all sorts of chemicals. But gas is worse by a long shot. So you definitely want some kind of, ventilation system. At the very least, open windows when you are cooking with a gas stove. And you can also ventilate again in your bathroom. If the air is being sucked out, it's going to be sucking in, creating a vacuum in your space. So that air filtration is going to come in through the little windows that leak in your door and stuff like that. But at least it's an air exchange. So ventilation is one of the things that you can do.
Oh, I love that. And, I don't often think about ventilating when I'm cooking.
Okay, now
No,
you will.
I will. You bet. I mean, I usually do open a window or a door, but it's far from my kitchen and I don't have a good fan. So fascinating. Oh, that's given me a lot to think about, Debbie. Thank you.
Good.
Yeah.
And just so that people know, if you are ever putting in a fan in your kitchen, there are two types. There are ones that exhaust to the outside, and there are ones that just circulate the air. And that basically the ones that circulate the air are useless. So you definitely want to exhaust to the outside.
Yeah. Thank you so much for this conversation. I learned a lot. That was very eye-opening about the EDCs, and great takeaway with the distance is your friend. So, Debbie, thank you for coming on Why Did I Get Cancer? It was a great conversation.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining me today on the Why Did I Get Cancer podcast. I've got my shopping guide for all of my cancer self-care items in the show notes, along with information about today's guest and our show sponsors. And don't forget to subscribe to my podcast so you never miss an episode. Keep in mind, I'm not a doctor. I'm just a gal that got diagnosed with cancer and wanted answers. If you need medical advice, please be sure to consult with a medical professional. And thank you for listening.